So I'm Charlotte, I am a mum. I've got two children, Ollie James who's 7 and Jacob who's 2.5, and I live with Terence, my partner, in New Ferry.
Hi, I'm Nick. I grew up in West Wirral, so initially in West Kirby, then moved over to Caldy when I was 15. Spend my time working as a junior doctor now, working at a GP practice in Birkenhead. And yeah, so when I'm not working, I'm generally involved in church, so either GC or with the youth. When I'm not doing that, I enjoy a bit of sport, fond of golf, as my GC can attest to.
Well, hi, I'm Pam. I'm from Northern Ireland, County Armagh. When I was about 20, I moved away, travelled a lot. I was a singer, did a lot of singing in bands over the years, travelling. Ventured to the Cayman Islands, spent about 8 years there. And since that, came back and I've had a total change of career. I'm now a counsellor, psychotherapist.
I've always questioned life and purpose and why we're here, and a lot of people I know don't have the same questions as me, and that used to really make me worry and think, why am I different? Why do I feel this way?
I think I became a Christian truly and fully when I was about 16, when I was in school. When I grew up, I didn't grow up in a church, but my dad was a Christian, and he would always pave the way for me and answer my questions and give me sort of Bible study videos and things to watch. I remember when I was 16 having watched YouTube teachings and sermons and just being convicted of my own sin and my need for a saviour. So I think it was at that point that I was saved, but then in the subsequent 7 to 8 years, I was never fully committed or invested in Christian fellowship. I was maybe part of a small group at university and would sporadically go to church, but I was quite shy and maybe more self-focused, and maybe felt a bit misunderstood and that I didn't fit in.
My mum's family was Christian, and my grandmother was quite, I guess the type of Christian I would describe her as was, she was quite stern, but maybe wouldn't have sat down and explained the gospel. So even though I had Sunday school, I didn't feel like I got a good grounding in Christianity then. Even though I knew the gospel, knew God existed. However, I didn't have the easiest of childhoods. I suffered a lot of abuse, mental, physical and sexual abuse from my father, which wasn't easy. And he would dip in and out of the church on occasion. I guess that skewed my view of what a Christian looked like. And eventually my father got jailed, and he heavily leaned on a pastor in jail who got him an early release. And at that time, that really had a conflict inside me. I felt confused about what Christianity stood for, even the pastor, why is he supporting my dad and no one was really supporting me? And I found just my mistrust and confusion around the church and God just led me to go the other way.
After college, I went to uni, and I was going to become a teacher, but lack confidence, I ended up doing psychology, and that again was because of all the questions I had. So my whole life seems to be seeking and searching for answers, and then after that I kind of thought I wanted a family, and well, from having Ollie James I suffered massively postnatal depression, and then going forward with Jacob it just heightened my OCD, depression, anxiety, and just to the point where I literally was suicidal. I got into this massive rut, and I was addicted to social media. I was addicted to Facebook, Instagram. I was constantly looking at what everyone's doing in their life. I suppose my life before Jesus was empty, yeah, I think. Even though I had children, a partner, a family home, people used to say to me, Charlotte, what more could you want? You've got everything, and there was something missing.
So 2017, after 18 months of just sort of debilitating, difficult symptoms that I didn't really understand or know, I was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So in the 18 months prior to that, it was really horrendous, really, because I was under a lot of pressure at medical school in my final year, and when you're on that career train, it's quite relentless, really. And and I had a lot of physical symptoms based off deficiencies in hormones from what the tumour was doing to my pituitary gland. And even though I was a medical student, I would kind of rationally deny those things, and I was just feeling misunderstood, you know, during that time, and not really knowing what was going on, and feeling that people were looking at me differently.
As much as I felt I was living my best life, behind the scenes, I was very alone, very confused, very sad, didn't have anyone really to talk to about that. And I did kind of crash, so I decided to look for counselling, and I found a wonderful counsellor. I was lucky, and I know God played a part in this, because towards the end of her counselling, she revealed to me that she was a Christian, and she invited me to a Christmas church service. There was something got planted in my head that night, and even though it wasn't instant, I found that just had me thinking about God a lot more.
When Ollie James was in nursery, I became friends with Annie, and we developed this, I can't even remember like how it came about, this like connection, this friendship, but the friendship with Annie that I've got is just completely different to any friendship I've ever had, and I just can't compare that to, I love all my friends, but there's just something different. And then Annie introduced me to Joe, and we used to go for coffees together, and then I just sit there and reel off all these anxieties, and he just started to talk to me about the gospel, and then when I had Jacob, like, they were really, really supportive, and I don't think I'd have got through the difficulties I had if it wasn't for them. And then following that, they invited me to GC, and it was just like instant connections that I felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I belonged there. I just wanted to know more about Jesus, more about what they were all about.
You see, I was diagnosed in May 2017, and I had to have an operation just to check the tumour type and to remove pressure, and then four cycles of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And I think it was in and through that I knew the intellectual response to suffering as a Christian, but I think in and through that God did transform and work in me to know that Jesus knows pain and suffering, that he's not far off, he's intimate and involved. It's just that you long for someone to deeply understand what you're going through, and in Christianity you have Jesus who comes down and joins us in our predicament, in our sin, and that's the most beautiful thing. That's the thing that really comforts me, reading passages like Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22 and Psalm 69, where the Messianic Psalms where Jesus pours out his heart and his brokenness, and that is such a comfort, really. The fact that Jesus had that empathy and knows those emotions and those feelings and what it's like to be isolated and rejected, but also that he endured, and that he is the sinless one who in most ways is the only one that can really empathise with us and can offer us true comfort, and the fact that he's in heaven now, you know, with us, interceding for us, that is the hope that got me through, really.
The last relationship I was in went a bit unhealthy, and I seen old patterns reoccurring in myself, and that was a turning point. It was through heartbreak, realising that this world isn't me doing my direction, me going at my pace and doing my own thing isn't working.
So with GC, we were going along as a family, so it was the four of us, it wasn't just me, we were doing it as a family. So that was just something beautiful in that, like the fact that it wasn't like an isolation thing. And then going forward, we just started mixing with people from church, and then I started to stay at GC because I was like questioning more about what they were saying about Jesus. And then from there we decided to go to a sermon at church, and The first sermon I went to it just felt like home, I think, from the beginning, and I just felt this natural, like instinctive like feeling that I thought, like, this is what I need, and from then on I haven't looked back.
When I started work at Arrow Park as a junior doctor after finishing medical school, I met Dr. Josh, as you may know, and also Adele as well, who were on the same, starting at the same time as me, and that was a real blessing, and that they were great friends who I was able to go to church with and start that, and to deal with difficult things, often focusing on other people and being more outward. You know, it alleviates and reduces your own anxiety and issues, and I think God has changed my heart in that, whereas I'd previously be more self-focused and driven. I
started to look at sermons online, and I found God just spoke into so many of my struggles. There was a lot that, even just looking at Jesus' life as well, how he suffered, and it made me realise too that the forgiveness, I guess, what held me back from Christianity as well for years was I felt I've sinned too much to even go back, even though I knew the gospel. And then it was seeking out a good church, and I found Cornerstone. I've just felt so much that it's answers that it's given me and a belonging. Being a counsellor, I have a room that's obviously got a bookshelf with lots of self-help books of all kinds, depression, anxiety, how to sort all that out. I put the Bible there, and like when I do look now, the Bible offers more psychological help than any one of those books. Even though it's secular counselling I do, I can sort of wean the Bible and what I learned from it into that.
When I was sort of started going to Cornerstone and hearing the gospel, it was all pointing to Jesus, and I just couldn't like understand that, and I was just thinking, like, how do I fit into this? And then as the more I understood and learned about Jesus, that just made me realise, like, what Jesus has done for us is just, it doesn't compare to anything. I've got a purpose to live for, and I still get anxious, but he helps me with that. He's suffered, he's been anxious himself, he's been tempted, and knowing that he's done that just makes that a massive comfort, and I can draw close to Jesus and ask him for help in them moments. I've always been defined by my anxiety, and now I don't fight the anxiety, but I pray about it, and when I'm anxious I ask God for help in that, and it's only through Jesus that I can do that. And I've just learned that Jesus is the way, the truth and the life, and he's everything. Life's got no purpose without him.
I suppose people can look at my story and reflect on how amazing and strong my faith was to endure that circumstance, but in reality it wasn't at all, really. It's like everything is stripped away to the point of brokenness, and that I think that's something that can scare us as Christians or normal people to go through suffering, but in reality it's in and through that stripping away that you learn to trust God for who he is, and you can have that depth and intimacy of relationship. So I think that would be what I would say, is that whatever suffering you're going through, you won't know the purpose at the time, but there is a purpose, and when things are stripped away, and you can see God differently. So I think it's not something we should be afraid of, because God is sovereign, and he is at work in those circumstances.
I guess like the belief, I know that when I grew up, Jesus seemed like this figure, this myth, but when you do look into his life and read the Bible, and you could just compare so many things, how he lived to how the struggles that we have. This life, the Christian lifestyle, has so much more to offer, so much that, you know, there's not that drama, there's not the sorrow, the confusion that's in the world. It just, Jesus gives us that grounding.